Hello everyone. So it's been a while since my last YouTube video and I just wanted to show you what I've been up to since then. So there are two things. Firstly, you might look at this and think it is a BetaFPV VRO2, which it is, but something has happened to it. A Raspberry Pi has an analog output signal for the video, and these goggles internally they have an analog signal trace from the video receiver inside to the display. So I realized that if you cut this trace, you can sort of inject a video from a Raspberry Pi into these goggles. So the way I've done it is I have a switch here which switches between the analog signal from the analog receiver in these goggles and the Raspberry Pi, and it also switches between powering this DVR, which you might have seen in one of my previous YouTube videos where I show how to connect it to these goggles. And between powering the Raspberry Pi and the Wi-Fi module. The Raspberry Pi works with the RubyFPV system, which is made by Petru. So I decided to try it. I flashed Ruby on my tiny drone with the OpenIPC Thinker unit. And this works. This goggle, it does work. However, there is a problem because the battery it has, I mean, this is the original battery. I just sort of doubled the battery capacity by also strapping in a battery from my sister's broken Google Pixel here, and they are connected in parallel. So it sort of increases battery capacity, but the voltage is still 1S. And the Raspberry Pi and the Wi-Fi module, they need 5 volts, which is more than these batteries provide. So I used this voltage booster converter, which I found in my dad's drawer, but this thing does not work very well. It does give 5 volts when you give it 1S voltage, but the output current is a bit limited. I know this because when using just a single Wi-Fi module in the goggles, it did work. It did receive video from this drone, not very well, but it did. But the goggles also have a USB port for connecting a memory stick, because how Ruby works is you can transfer the DVR from your ground station to a memory stick so that you can put it on your computer. But I decided that why not? Let's just buy a Wi-Fi adapter connected to the USB port and have an external antenna, because why not? But the thing is, as soon as I increased the output power from 1 milliwatt to 25 milliwatts on the drone, Ruby, it decided to also increase its output power because Ruby has an uplink as well as the downlink. So the goggles also send commands to the drone, and it also works for retransmissions and just, you know, bi-directional video stream in general. But I plugged this in and the goggles just powered off. The Raspberry Pi just power cycled because this voltage booster, it just couldn't provide enough current. So I decided to do something about it. And I did something about it. I designed a little PCB. I designed it in KiCad, and it uses this voltage booster chip that I heard it's quite good for stepping up voltage. It can do, I think from the datasheet it said it can do about, it can step up to 5 volts from 1.9 volts, and it has 2.1 amps of output current. So I decided to give it a go. I designed this circuit and a PCB, and I'm going to share the files for this in the video description. One thing I can recommend in KiCad is you can download a little plugin. You can download a plugin from the Plugin and Contents Manager, which is called Fabrication Toolkit for JLC PCB. You can just type in JLC here, because I actually had these boards manufactured by JLC PCB. So they have sponsored me with these boards, provided me with 50 of them for free, because I wanted to try out making a panel. I haven't actually arranged the panel myself. I selected the option for JLC PCB to panelize the board for me, and it turned out quite well. Also, I chose the fancy gold-plated option, and it looks beautiful. The boards look beautiful. They look very cute on their little panels. You can just snap them off, and they are pretty light as well. Ordering from JLC PCB is pretty easy. Just do it by dragging it, and it is really that simple. You can just change the PCB color, change the thickness, and if you want assembly, then you'll have to also upload the additional files for the bill of materials and the positions. But yeah, I am very happy with the results. JLC PCB asked me to promote their service since they have paid for making me 50 of these boards, and I think they work pretty well. So here, because I have so many of them and because they are so tiny, I actually used 3 of them here. So I have a separate one for stepping up voltage to the USB module, USB port, sorry. A separate one for powering the Raspberry Pi, and a separate one for powering the Wi-Fi module. And I also upgraded from using this one, that needs 3.3 volts, to this one. I think this one heats up less, so I'll see how it goes. And I know this looks pretty junky, but I had one of those that when I tried to detach the IPEX connector for the antennas, the entire socket just came off. So that's why I soldered the connectors to the shielding. And yeah, so there are 3 of these step-up boards, and I already know they work better than this one did, because previously, once I tried to connect this keyboard to these goggles to do some configuration, and the Raspberry Pi just crashed because this module couldn't supply enough power to this RGB keyboard, because it just has to output colors for some reason all the time. When it's not configured, because in Windows I have the colors configured, but when it's not, just does this rainbow pattern which draws up a lot of current. But now it works, so this step-up module can drive all the LEDs in this keyboard, so I think it's going to work much better. So yeah, I still just need to assemble these goggles fully, and probably use some hot glue to secure these components so that they don't just rattle around. So yeah, this is one thing that I was up to. Another thing is Kenny from the OpenIPC team sent me a new OpenIPC air unit. You can see it here. It's called the Evolution. It's not being sold at the moment. It's just in the testing phase, but it has much more output power than the Thinker, and it also uses a similar camera module. The camera modules are compatible between the Thinker and this one. So I'm going to build a 4-inch, and this is actually this frame. I had a CNC cut out of 4mm and 2mm carbon fiber sheet by a friend. I slightly modified the arms from the open source design, which you can find on GitHub. It's called the Source Pod Racer by Team Black Sheep. Yeah, but I had to slightly modify these arms to accommodate my motors, which are just some old Emacs motors that I wanted to use. And I also modified the canopy. I printed it out of TPU, but I also wanted to make it higher so that this big stack fits in. And I also modified it so that I have one antenna here and another one. It will be like here going down where this hole is. So it will be going down at an angle, and it should work. It should like go right underneath the props. So yeah, this will actually be the third iteration of this drone. The first one was analog, and the second iteration used this big chunky canopy that I also made, which had the old style of OpenIPC camera that I liked to use, the cheap SSC30KQ based camera from AliExpress, together with the EU2 module, the same one as I'm using here. Yeah, but this worked pretty well. But I'm just going to rebuild it with this nice and sleek air unit because it's just neater, smaller, lighter. Yeah. So I'm planning to make a full video on these goggles once I get them up and running again. Do I recommend doing this modification? Not really. The Raspberry Pi is a bit limited, and the resolution you actually see on the display is essentially analog. But you do get recording in like 720p or 1080p, so that's a plus. But yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it unless you really want to. It's very funny for me because these goggles are so tiny. They are so tiny, but still BetaFPV put enough empty space inside to fit an entire digital VRX. Like we have Raspberry Pi, we have step-up modules, the Wi-Fi receiver, and also the USB hub, because the Raspberry Pi only has one USB port. The other is just for power, so it has one USB port, and I needed to have one Wi-Fi adapter and one port for connecting a memory stick. Okay, so these goggles are a total pain to assemble in the modified state that they are. Just a bunch of wires everywhere. But yeah, here you can see that underneath there is this trace that I broke, which runs from the analog video receiver to this chip which drives the display. I cut it and I essentially put it through this bistable switch, where it essentially splits the video source. It's like having a source button on your monitor, but it also, like, this switch has two rails, and one rail controls the video source, whether it's Raspberry Pi or the VRX, and the other controls power, whether it goes, whether the power from here, because like this little switch, it doesn't actually switch on the power directly. It's like sends a signal to a MOSFET to switch on the power, but I burned out the MOSFET because I added too much capacitors, so I chopped off some MOSFETs from a broken Tiny Whoop all-in-one flight controller. So these are P-channel MOSFET arrays. There is like a chip which has two MOSFETs, and I soldered up the MOSFET and sealed it with super glue. And I also did the same thing here, where when the Raspberry Pi is powered, so when it's in digital Ruby mode, it powers off this analog VRX to save power. So I know it looks very junky, it looks very cursed, but it does work as it's supposed to. Yeah, it's just a funny goggle. I will make a full video about these goggles once I have them up and running again, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'll try them with this extra Wi-Fi adapter again. I think it should work better. And I might also try it with this more powerful drone once I assemble everything. So yeah, this video might be longer than I intended it to be. It might not be what you're interested. I don't know. I mean, it's usually I make YouTube videos much more polished, but it takes a lot of time to make a polished YouTube video, and I wanted to just put something out there because my channel has been dead recently. So let me know if you enjoy this vlog format or not. I might make more videos like this in the future. So thanks for watching. Bye.